Parents, the following program is intended for people over the age of 13. Peter Bernard's Scary Stories for Adults.
Welcome to Day 7 of the Dogman Days of August. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. How big a mess did Henry Lee make here yesterday? Never trust a dogman to do a Bigfoot's work. You know, it's always an honor to talk about our executive producers, but today we have an especially nice lady from Massachusetts, home of the Bridgewater Triangle and lots of Dogman stories. She leaves us the nicest comments and we love having her around. Of course, I'm speaking of the one and only Cheryl from Boston. From Boston comes Ms. Cheryl. Ms. Cheryl is from Boston. The Dogman is quite feral and she helps us with his costin'. Thank you, Cheryl from Boston, helping us with the costin'. We couldn't do it without your contributions and your lovely presence in the comment section. We hope you enjoy the new secret, uncensored stories we share only with our executive producers each Sunday. If you out there would also like to see those episodes and the 10 hours of archived secret episodes, just join our paid subscribers club at peterbernard.com or do what Cheryl did and click the join button underneath this video to become a channel member. And now, on to today's episode-length story. It's a really creepy one, set in the deep woods in an old cabin with nobody around for miles and miles and miles. Nobody, that is, except the Dogman. So then you'll understand why we call this story The Cabin in Dogman Woods. Dear Scary Stories NYC, have you ever set out to have the most fun you ever had and ended up having everything ruined and barely escaping with your life? Well, that's what happened to me and my girlfriend when we tried to spend a week in my family's small cabin in Dogman Woods. When I was a kid, this cabin was the state-of-the-art in luxury while sitting in a beautiful area in Pennsylvania with forests, fields, rivers, and a lake you could swim in. We had a more expensive TV here than at home back then, and we got the internet at the cabin before we got it back in the city. I had so much fun at that cabin when my family would summer there that when my girlfriend and I moved in together a couple years ago, I asked her if she wanted to go there for a vacation. She said sure, and I made the arrangements with my father to pick up the keys on a mutually agreeable week. As we drove out to the country, we were both in high spirits. After the first hour of driving, though, my girlfriend, let's call her Stella, had become bored and was beginning to act out in order to get attention. She tried to hug me suddenly, which almost caused me to turn off the road, and I asked her to please be more careful. She stuck her head in her phone, and that was the last she spoke to me for the rest of the trip out there. When we arrived, I was a bit surprised to see that the place had begun to look a little run down. It was dusty inside, too, and I wondered what the last time was that anybody had been there in the old place. While I lugged all our stuff in, Stella complained that she couldn't find any Wi-Fi. I looked around inside for a computer, hoping that there might be a Wi-Fi password written down somewhere nearby it, when I discovered the same old 1990s desktop still connected to that original 56K modem. My hopes for Wi-Fi evaporated. I started to wonder if anybody had been in the cabin this century. While I opened windows to air the place out and started sweeping and dusting, Stella started talking in her weak voice. She uses the weak voice when she's about to tell me that she's being victimized, and when that happens, I'm not allowed to point out simple solutions that would end her misery. No, I have to accept that she is a victim, and her victimhood is inescapable. I have to feel guilty and to blame myself about it, and Well, actually, that's about it. The point is she's put upon and I'm to blame. I try to make a game out of it. I try to guess what she's unhappy about and in what way she managed to twist it around that this means she's being victimized by me. I guess that this one would have to do with dust, probably. I wasn't dusting correctly, maybe, and her allergies would be affected and I should feel deep shame about it. I was off the mark. Entirely. She was feeling weak, she told me, because the cabin scared her. I put my arm around her reassuringly and told her that she was safe as long as I was around. She told me not to touch her, and that I don't take her problems seriously, and something about the patriarchy. I went back to sweeping, as she explained that the cabin reminded her of the one from the movie The Evil Dead, and she didn't want to sleep there. I told her the cabin wasn't anything like the one from The Evil Dead. She pointed out that it was a one-floor cabin with a creepy, dark basement, and it was at the end of a dirt pathway deep in the woods down south. I was like, so? She also pointed out that you have to cross a covered bridge to get to the place, and she asked me to name one thing about that cabin that we were in that was different from the movie. Just because I couldn't come up with an answer for a while doesn't mean there aren't lots of differences between the two places. A few minutes later, I told her, you know what? We have no chainsaw in our basement. Then I laughed. She didn't. Laugh, that is. For the rest of the evening, whatever I said got greeted with a look as though I had just backhanded her grandmother. Stella went to bed early, so I did as well. Rising with the sun, I took a walk around outside in the morning light. There was the old root cellar. It was built into the side of the hill, and it looked as though Bilbo Baggins might live inside it. I trotted back into the house and opened the old drawer that my father would keep the household keys and combinations in. Walking back outside with the old key ring brought back the most nostalgia of the entire trip so far. It took some struggling to get the door unlocked and open, but I was soon peering inside the old root cellar / man-made cave cut into the side of the hill. It was completely covered with spider and cobwebs. Dust of the ages floated out into the morning. Other than that, it looked the same as I had last seen it, including the door and the back way leading to the hallway. I decided to leave the door open to let it air out. Then I went back inside to wash the dust off myself and get the day started. By the time I was out of the shower, Stella was up and draining all the inspiration out of the atmosphere, so I forgot I had planned on cleaning up the root cellar. We spent the morning and early afternoon watching old VHS tapes, intermixed with Stella asking me if we could please go home. Finally, I agreed that we'd go home the following day. That wasn't enough for her. She wanted to drive home that night. I told her I wanted to enjoy myself for one last day at this place that had meant an awful lot to me when I was younger, and I'd feel much safer driving home in the morning after a good night's sleep. If we went home that night, I might fall asleep at the wheel. Eventually, she gave up and contented herself with us going home the following day. After we ate something, I convinced her to go for a walk outside under the moon. Something about the atmosphere worked to relax both of us, and we were finally able to enjoy some time together out by the cabin. We were starting to even get a little romantic when something happened that would turn even a nymphomaniac off. We were directly confronted with a snarling, whining, canine beast. It was on all fours, but its head was parallel to mine. I'm 6'1", so that was an extremely tall wolf, or dog, or coyote. He was growling at us, baring his teeth, and making extremely agitated sounds. It could get very deep and growly, then suddenly extremely high-pitched and manic. The eyes would look to us, then stare upward and away. I was about to warn Stella not to look it in the eyes, but I saw she had turned her back on it and had her fingers in her ears. We were standing against a big tree, so it was not going to be the easiest thing to back away from this big dog. I put my arm around my girlfriend gently, and fortunately, she accepted me this time and followed as I led her backward around the massive tree trunk to the other side. We moved slowly and quietly. Once we were out of the dog's line of vision, I whispered, "Run." And then we both kicked into high gear, racing back to the cabin. I think it took the immense canine a while to figure out what we were doing, but when he did, he let out a loud series of ridiculously overdramatic barks and then tore off after us. I made it to the cabin and opened the door for Stella, waiting for her to catch up to me and run inside. In those few seconds, I saw something that literally knocked the knees out from under me. I saw the dog was chasing us, yes, but he was doing so on his hind legs. He was impossibly tall before, but mind-numbingly tall now. The creature took a step forward, and branches I could never reach were broken off and sent plummeting to the ground as his head and massive shoulders walked forward through them. Branches I would have difficulty breaking with both arms were like twigs to this man-like canine monster. The eyes on the thing looked so frightened and angry, so furious to the point of stupidity, that I wondered why it was so agitated by our presence there. Maybe this dog thing had spent his entire lifetime there and had never seen a human. Or maybe he had just chased off any humans that he had found. He and I both felt we had a claim on that spot of land for different reasons, but his feelings were accompanied by his savage nature. He wasn't sure what I was capable of, but he seemed more than willing to find out. If he could defeat me and Stella, he was gonna try. I understood this, but my mind was on survival and avoiding conflict and injury. I'm sorry if that's not a heroic thing to say, but I am not Superman, and I wanted for my girlfriend and myself to get through this unscathed. I had to decide what I was gonna do, and I had to make it happen fast. But first, I needed to get my knees back under control and under me. I watched, with my butt on the floor of the back porch, as this huge dog or wolf took a few steps closer to me. Then, I grabbed that doorknob, pulled myself up, and basically flung myself inside. I asked Stella to make sure everything was fastened tight and locked, and then I bolted the back door. It seemed only seconds passed before we heard glass break, and Stella began screaming that he was inside. The giant dog was inside. I don't know if that was true, but I know that a window had definitely been broken in the back. I pulled up the trap door, and we both ran down to the spooky basement. I locked the escape hatch from our side and relaxed, telling Stella there was no way even that thing could get in there with us now. I wasn't sure he could even fit through that trap door anyway. He was just that large. Stella hadn't seen the creature very well, so at this point, she quizzed me about details she had missed in the excitement. I told her it was a black dog, but it might also have been a black wolf. I didn't know that there were black wolves back then, so I thought it was a dog. At any rate, neither dogs nor wolves were supposed to stand up like the Frankenstein monster and try to break into your family's summer cabin. So maybe it was neither dog nor wolf, but some entirely different kind of creature. She asked me if it had a tail, and I honestly did not and do not recall. While we were chatting and getting back on the same page with each other, we both kept hearing and feeling bumps. Really hard, sudden thumps or bumps. They didn't seem to be coming from upstairs, but I felt safe where we were and I wasn't really concerned about them. Stella, on the other hand, grew more and more tense with each successive thump and bump. Finally, she asked me, "Are you sure there's no other way into or out of here besides that trap door?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." But then a weird feeling in my belly hit me. It was like my gut remembered before my head did. The root cellar. There was a back door in the root cellar leading to an old underground corridor which led to... I turned around, remembering the door in the shadows in the back of the basement. The root cellar connected to this basement, and I had left the root cellar open earlier in the day. A thumping hit that back door so hard that you could see the thick old door's wood bend in the middle. That was a solidly built wooden masterpiece of a door, but it wasn't going to hold for more than a minute or two of that kind of pounding. But that would be more than enough time for us to get up the trap door and make a run for our car. I climbed up and unlocked the trap door. I gave Stella the car keys and I told her to head straight for the car and get herself inside it. As I watched her leave, I heard the sound of wood cracking, and I knew the beast was about to break through to our side. I locked both the trap door and the front door just to slow the Dogman down. Then I ran after Stella. I thought she might have started the car up so that we could get away more quickly, but she was curled up on the back seat in the fetal position. She had locked all the doors and windows and left the keys on the passenger seat. I began banging on the glass to get her to open the door for me. She was semi-catatonic and shivering as she looked up at me sort of blankly. I shouted her name, and she began to realize where she was again. Rather than opening the door, she leaned into the passenger seat to grab the keys. Her mind wasn't being logical. She was still in shock. I heard the horrible sound of my family's summer vacation cabin's front door being broken open from the inside, and I turned to see a black-furred Dogman come out that was so large he broke the door frame on both the left and the right side. Zombie Stella opened the car door to give me the keys. I grabbed them, then jumped inside, slamming and locking the door behind me. I inserted the keys into that ignition, and I was truly amazed more than anything that had happened so far. When the car started on the first try, I hit the gas, skidding to my left and aiming the vehicle directly at the immense, furry, dog-headed hulk blocking our path. I don't think that creature had ever seen anything like a 2011 Honda before, because his eyes got wide like he was seeing a UFO. Stella was screaming that we were going to wreck the car, and I think we probably would have if the Dogman hadn't leaped out of the way at the last second and allowed us to pass. I drove like an idiot the rest of the way until we were on the highway where I could see other cars again and felt safer. You know that once we were safe, I started screaming then. It was like I didn't have time to do it before. I just screamed like a crazy man, and as annoying as it must have been, Stella just left me alone and let me do it. If that Dogman hadn't moved, I don't think we would have gotten out of there. I think the animal was so massively and sturdily constructed that the car would have been far more damaged than he was. We would have been trapped at his mercy if that had happened. If he had seen even one car before in his life, he might have made a different choice. We only got out of there by sheer luck. The good part of this story is that I didn't get in trouble for the place getting wrecked. My father is a big Lauren Coleman fan, and he loves Bigfoot stories. He tells me that we really saw Bigfoot We just think we saw a Dogman. Other than that, though, he believes our story completely. We all went back out to the place to search for trace evidence, but all we found were some broken doors and that raccoons had taken up residence inside the cabin. We put some time, money, and effort into modernizing and fixing the old place up. Dad got high security doors that should withstand a battering ram, and also high security bulletproof windows. When the health crisis hit this year, Dad offered the cabin to me and Stella to stay at for the duration. And of course, we answered, "No way!" Being locked down was enough. Can you imagine doing it at the cabin in Dogman Woods?
Overheated? Keep cool with our Dogman Days of August. At least one new Dogman story every single day of August. How many days are there in August anyway? Oh, that's right. That means you get to hear at least 11-7 all-new Dogman stories before September. Right here on Scary Stories NYC. Now, could you please pass the tanning butter?
And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.
Come back for more scary stories.